Okay, good morning, everyone. So firstly, just to introduce myself, my name is Adam Roberts. I'm talking to you today from the Southern Cross Melbourne campus in Lonsdale Street. Today, we're going to be talking about the launch of some exciting new programs across the Southern Cross, Sydney, Melbourne and Perth campuses. What we're going to go through today, I'll give a bit of an overview of the different courses that we're launching. We have Debbie Aarons here, who runs student services for the campuses. Debbie will be talking a little bit about the structure of the course and how the placements work, the industry placements. And then we'll have John Crowder join us to run through some of the admissions requirements and the genuine student requirements for these courses. So we expect the presentation to take around about 25 or 30 minutes. There will be a chance for questions at the end. If you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A and we'll get to them at the end of the session. All right, so just to kick things off, a little bit of a reminder that the Sydney, Melbourne and Perth campuses, they used to be run by a company called Educo that myself and John Crowder worked with for a long time. December last year, they became part of Southern Cross University. So we're called SCU Ventures and we operate the Sydney, Melbourne and Perth campuses and we're part of Southern Cross University. Now in July this year, we changed the way that we work with our recruitment agents. If you're recruiting for Sydney, Melbourne and Perth, you can now recruit into all of the university campuses, including the Gold Coast and Lismore and Coffs Harbour. And likewise, if you were previously just recruiting for the main campuses, you can now recruit into the Ventures campuses into Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. Now, it's important to note that we do have a different recruitment team and a different admissions team for Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. John Crowder, who's here today, is the head of our admissions. And we also have two onshore recruitment managers that are here to help you if you're based in Australia. So before we go on, I'll just introduce them and you'll see on the screen here that I've put up their contact details. So first of all, we have Laura Chen, who's based in Sydney. Laura, would you like to say g'day to everyone?
Hi, good day, everyone. Hello from Sydney. I'm based in Sydney. So I'm looking forward to working with you closely, especially those based in New South Wales and Queensland, and looking forward to helping your students into our new program, Smart of Teaching. Thank you, Adam.
Excellent, Sheshe. Thank you, Laura. And in Melbourne and also looking after Perth at the moment until we have our new Perth staff member joining us, we have Maria. Maria, would you like to say g'day?
Hi, everyone. It's great to see you all. Yes, I'm based here in Melbourne. And if you're in Melbourne or Perth, it's very, very highly likely that I've met you. But if you've got any questions, really looking forward to some information here about our new courses. I'm sure you're all very excited and happy to answer any questions that you might have after the presentation.
All right. Gracias. Thank you, Maria. Good one. Okay, everyone. So just to kick off, before we start talking about the individual courses that we're launching at the Sydney, Melbourne, Perth campuses, I thought it might be useful just to give a very high-level overview of what's happening in the industry. A lot of you know that there's some big changes happening at the federal level, at the immigration level. And so just to summarize what's been going on. So it's now been almost 12 months since the Australian government and immigration started raising the visa refusal rate from a lot of key markets. So a lot of offshore markets like India and Nepal that used to have visas granted at 80, 90%. In September, October last year, the visa grant rates dropped very quickly, very unexpectedly. So that was the first indication that we had that something was going on at the government level to do with international students. And it became very clear in the early part of this year that our current government wanted to decrease the number of international students coming into Australia. The reason they want to do that, very simply, is because it will help them win the election that will probably come sometime next year. So since that decrease in visa refusal rates, we've seen a whole range of changes happen across the recruitment pipeline. So we had Ministerial Direction 107, which prioritizes the order in which applications are processed. As a result of that, level 2, level 3 institutions had much longer wait times for visas and also increased refusal rates. We've seen immigration slow down processing visas in key markets where visas used to be granted in 4 to 6 weeks. They're now sometimes taking 8 to 12 weeks from different markets. The government removed a post-study work extension that they'd only just announced last year. And as a result of that, students that could stay in Australia up to 5 years had their post-study work rights removed as well. They've made other changes on top of that, including, just lost my slide there. They restricted onshore students and how many of them could apply for visas in Australia. So they tried to get students already in Australia to leave the country by excluding certain types of students from applying for a visa. As a result of that, we've seen protests outside the immigration offices and all sorts of things. So in case that wasn't enough, the government is about to introduce updated risk levels for different institutions. That's expected later in September. And of course, the big one, they're planning to introduce caps for international students in Australia as a way of just setting the size of the international student program. So the big question that we get at Southern Cross is, how much is your cap and can we still send you students? Now, the good news is that, well, for us, not for some other people, other universities have been affected in a very bad way. For example, some of the group of 8 universities will have to reduce their student numbers by about 20%. But across the regional universities, they've been encouraged to increase their numbers by about 78%. So these numbers are out in the public domain. The draft number for Southern Cross is 1,300 places. Now, as a university, we only enrolled about 650 students last year. So we actually need to fill our cap. We need to get out there and recruit more students so we can meet our cap at the university. So our challenge at this stage is getting enough students to meet the cap, which is good because as we sit here today, we need your help to send us more students. Okay, so just having a look at, first of all, the industry that sits behind the courses that we're launching today. I think everyone on the call would be aware that there's a shortage of workers in the early childhood area. So I just jumped online yesterday. I had a look in Western Australia, which is the article on the left. I had a look in New South Wales, which is the article in the middle. Article on the right is from Victoria. There are chronic early childhood worker shortages across Australia at the moment, and these numbers are in the thousands. Now, you'll be hearing on the news today that the government, the federal government and the state governments are planning to invest more and more in this sector. And the single largest challenge they have is getting enough qualified workers. So the courses we're going to talk about today are designed to prepare students to work in the early childhood sector. So in terms of what that actually means for students doing the courses, you'll see here on the left, I think everyone would be aware about the skilled occupation list. This is called the core skilled occupation list, which is the one that's being developed by the government now. They have a confident on list where they look into the future and they predict if there are going to be shortages or not in a particular sector. And as you can see there, early childhood, a pre-primary school teacher is listed by the federal government on the core skilled occupation list. confident on. So looking into the future, it is going to be a skill shortage area. Simply what that means for students is that there are lots of jobs available when they graduate from these courses. So in terms of the courses that we offer, the Graduate Diploma of Education, we launched in Sydney and Melbourne in July this year, and it very quickly became the most popular course that we have offered. So we launched it in July. We had 25 places in Sydney, 25 places in Melbourne, and we more than doubled that number of students that came in and joined us. We just had another intake last month. It grew again, and for term 5 in October, we're expecting it to grow even further. So it's an extremely popular course. It's a one-year course, and it's suitable for students already in Australia to come and study. The majority of students are on a 485 visa, but it is possible for some students to study it on a student visa. For students that are studying on a 485, we highly encourage them to come into campus and study, but because they're on a 485, they have the flexibility of attending their classes remotely or online if they want to. Now, the new course that we're launching today is called the Master of Teaching. It's a progression from the Graduate Diploma of Early Childhood. It's a 2-year program, and the first year of the program is exactly the same as the Graduate Diploma. So students enrolling in it will study the Graduate Diploma during the first year and then move into the Master of Teaching in the second year. So there's an option for students to enroll in a package or in a direct 2-year Master of Teaching. And John Crowder will explain how that system works in the background. So some of the key things to be aware of with the Graduate Diploma and the Masters, they'll be running across all 3 campuses. So Melbourne and Sydney and Perth will be offering these programs. We have 4 intakes per year. So there's one in March, which we call T1, June, August, and then October. And the important thing about the Graduate Diploma of Education, we still have an intake this year, which is suitable for onshore students. So if students want to start in October, the application deadline is the 30th of October at midday at 12 o'clock. So we still have quite a few weeks for students to apply, but we highly encourage you not to wait till the last minute. The earlier you apply, the easier it is to organise the enrolment. Student gets to orientation and they have a much better chance of passing from there. With the Graduate Diploma, the tuition fees are very low. They're $31,520 for next year, and every student receives an automatic scholarship, which is $6,000 for that program. The Master of Teaching is our new course. As I mentioned, it runs across the 3 campuses, runs for 2 years. It also has 4 intakes per year. The tuition fees are even more affordable. They're $31,000, but every student receives an $8,000 scholarship coming into that program. So here's a bit of a snapshot of the tuition fees for next year across the metro campuses. You'll notice that bachelors are about $33,000 generally, masters are about $36,000. But if you look at the education programs at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice their tuition fees are quite a bit more affordable. They're both around the $31,000 mark. And on top of that, we have a $6,000 scholarship for the Graduate Diploma and an $8,000 scholarship for the Master of Teaching, which brings the Master of Teaching price down to $23,000 for their first year. And then depending on the student's GPA, they can then earn a scholarship up to $8,000 for the second year onwards. So the first year is automatic. The second year depends on the student's GPA. All right, we'll have John Crowder talking about admissions in just a few moments. I think the highlight with our admissions is I think we have the fastest admissions process of any public university in Australia. If a complete application is submitted, you will get a response within 1 business day, and you'll have an offer letter coming back for your student from there, which means that you can grab them and get them enrolled before they wander off down the road and go and talk to someone else. So I will wrap that up there, and I'll hand over to Debbie, who is going to talk to us about the industry placements and how they work for students in the GDEC and the Master of Teaching. So over to you, Debbie.
Thank you, Adam, and welcome everybody. It's really lovely to be here and to see you all. I'm sure, excuse me, many of you would have questions around placements, and again, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat box and we will get to those as soon as possible. Just a couple of points around the placements. You will see that there is a mandatory requirement for all students to complete their placements, and those are indicated by the 2 units. The one is in term 3, 2025, and the other one you'll see there on the slide is in term 5. So there's TCHR 6008, which is a 30 days placement across 2 terms. It says a dual term. Dual term means it covers 2 terms. And there's another one there in term 5, which again is a dual term across term 4 and term 5. There's also the observational placement, which is a 10-day observational placement in term 4. So a couple of things around placement is mandatory. So every student needs to complete and pass their placement experience in order to graduate. The placement has to be done onshore in one of the accredited centres, placement centres in Australia. So those points of placements are very, very important for students to note. They are unpaid placements, so students again need to ensure, working with the university calendar, that they are aware that for those placement days, if they are working elsewhere, they're going to need to opt out of their working situation and do their placement. Now, many of the common questions that are asked in terms of the placement is, what do students need to do to prepare for placements? And the first one and most important one is all students need to apply for their Working with Child Check. Now, the application for Working with Child Check varies from state to state, and the time it takes to get that child check approved will vary from state to state. So our advice is that all applications, all students who are going to pick up an offer need to apply for their Working with Child Check online as soon as possible. A student will not be placed in a centre without that child check permission, which is granted from the state. The student then does need to complete a number of mini courses before going into the placement, and these little courses prepare the students for their placement in that centre. And these are around health, work health and safety, anaphylaxis treatment, understanding the childcare environment in Australia, the do's and don'ts of working in a childcare. Now, many students who are onshore may already be working in a childcare centre, and they then say, can I do my placement in that centre? And the answer there is maybe. So absolutely, if they are in a paid position already, we simply have to cross-check that that centre meets the requirements of the course, in other words, with their accreditation. And if it is an accredited centre, yes, they may continue to do their placement in that centre. Can students apply for their own placement? The answer there is no. The university does all the applications for that placement for the students, and they are placed in a centre within a boundary of 90 minutes travel from their state of residence. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but all of the issues around placement is actually coordinated directly from the university, not independently by the students themselves. I think other questions that come up maybe from students is, can I do my placements in a part-time manner? How do I know which dates I'm going to go onto my placement? And can I defer my placement? And a couple of responses there is, the actual dates that you are placed within those terms may vary. And again, this is coordinated by what we call our PEX team, the Placement Experience Team. So yes, it may be an option, but it's not guaranteed. Generally, most of the centres require students to be there full-time within their work hours. So the students would probably be looking at a Monday to Friday and a full day, but there are possibilities depending on the availabilities of those centres. All right. Can we defer placements? This is a little bit of a tricky one. I think John might mention this a little bit as well after me, in that if you have a look at this, you will see that this course is designed to be completed within a year. And the expectation is that the students complete the course within the period of the course running. So this also has, of course, consequences for a student's visa if they choose to defer a term or a placement. So again, placements are not offered throughout the year. They are offered in certain periods on the calendar in the year. So if a student does defer a placement, they may find that they may have issues in terms of completion within their visa regulations. And again, if they are not able to complete their placements within the time period of a visa, which may not be able to be renewed, they may not be able to graduate. So these are all really important concerns that a student may have. So the advice is, follow the course structure, follow your study plan, and just be prepared and ready to finish within the duration of that course structure. So I'll have a look in the messages to see if there are any questions in the meanwhile, but I think that would be all from me. So perhaps over to John.
Debbie, just before you go there, there's a question from Linda Jiang asking, what is the course structure for the October intake in Sydney? And I imagine that relates to placements there. Have you got any information on that?
I do have a study plan for that. I'll have to get that up on the screen to look at the calendar, and I will share that with you. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much, Debbie. I think we will now go on to John Crowder. So John, I'll stop sharing there and hand over to you.
Thank you, Adam, and good morning to everyone there. Pleasure as usual to be with you all. I will just get my screen open. And there we go. So I'll get through this as quickly as possible. I know there's a lot of questions already starting to come in the chat box, and I understand that a lot of those will be around admissions and the genuine student requirements. So perhaps those will be answered in the presentation. If not, feel free to put your questions there and we'll get to those as soon as possible. As Adam mentioned, the admissions team is extremely proud of its 24-hour turnaround times. I'm sure all of you will agree that we probably have the best turnaround times in the country. If you lodge an application without all of the required documentation, we will still get back to you within 24 hours and advise you what further documentation is required. But generally speaking, most students will receive a provisional or conditional offer within a 24-hour period. Our website is here, and we do recommend that you bookmark it, scuventures.com.au. The website gives you a link to a really important tool. This one down the bottom right-hand corner here, the GSR and Admissions Guide. If you click onto that button, it will take you through to a very useful tool that allows you to see the same information that the admissions team sees. It will give you all of the academic entry requirements and the genuine student requirements as well. So it is well worth having a look at. And I'll go through that if we have time at the end of the session. Just looking at the entry requirements now for the two courses, you probably had these before, but I'll just go over them and make sure everyone is clear. So for the Graduate Diploma of Education in Early Childhood, we require completion of an Australian bachelor's degree or equivalent. So that is the minimum entry requirement, completion of an Australian bachelor degree or equivalent. The IELTS requirement is 6.5 with no band less than 6.5, or PTE 58 with no band less than 58, or completion of an Australian bachelor's degree. So if the student has studied onshore in Australia, completed the minimum of an Australian bachelor's degree, they will meet the higher English requirement of IELTS 6.5 with no band less than 6.5. For the Master of Teaching, we require completion of an Australian bachelor's degree or equivalent, or completion of the Graduate Diploma of Education in Early Childhood. So if they're going directly into the Masters, it would be completion of an Australian bachelor's degree, or if they have completed the Graduate Diploma of Education in Early Childhood, they would go into the second year, which is the Masters. So as Adam mentioned before, the Master of Teaching is a 2-year program, the first year of which is the Graduate Diploma. So if they complete the Graduate Diploma, they get full credit into the second year of the course. The IELTS requirement is IELTS 7 with no band less than 7. So this is one of those higher English requirement courses. That translates to a PTE of 65 with no band less than 65. Or completion of the Graduate Diploma of Education Early Childhood. So if they're going through the Grad Dip pathway, they will meet the IELTS 7 requirement without having to provide further evidence of another IELTS test or something like that. So IELTS 6.5 for entry into the Graduate Diploma, IELTS 7 for direct entry into the Masters, or 6.5 if they're coming through the package from the Graduate Diploma to the Masters. So hopefully that's clear. If anyone's got any further questions on entry requirements, please put them in the chat box, but it is fairly self-explanatory there. Now, I want to look at some of the red flag cases that may require further attention from admissions. I should state up front that just because a case is a red flag does not mean that it will automatically be rejected. So it is always worth lodging an application, and we will let you know if there's a problem with that. There are very few cases that would be rejected outright, but there are some instances in which that would happen. So looking at the Graduate Diploma, the red flag scenarios would be Firstly, applicants who have studied multiple unrelated courses and now wish to transfer to the graduate diploma. So as you'll all be aware, under the genuine student requirement, a student must be able to provide evidence that the course that they are studying is of benefit to their future. If we see a student who studied 3, 4 or 5 different courses in Australia and now wants to transfer to a graduate diploma, we would question that. Now, we would ask for further documentation. And obviously, this only applies if the student is on a student visa or applying for a student visa. If the student is on a 485 visa or a 408 visa and can complete within the duration of that visa, we don't care. It doesn't matter. There are no genuine student requirements in cases like that. This is only for students on a student visa who cannot complete within the duration of their student visa and will be applying for a new student visa. Also, applicants who are currently studying a master's degree in a different discipline. So let's say they're currently studying a Master of Professional Accounting and they want to downgrade to the Graduate Diploma of Education. Now, we've been advised very clearly by immigration that this is considered a downgrade and would be looked at unfavourably by immigration. It may result in cancellation of their student visa if it comes to immigration's attention. So, generally speaking, if a student is studying a Master's of Education or a Master of Teaching and they want to downgrade to the Graduate Diploma, there is no problem with that at all. But if a student is studying a Master of Professional Accounting and wants to downgrade to the Graduate Diploma, we would need to look at that very closely and would ask for further information. The student may be required to do an interview and may be required to provide a written statement explaining why they want to do this. So again, it's considered a red flag, and red flag cases are looked at on a case-by-case basis where we look at the application holistically and look at the profile of the student. Applicants who have been in Australia for more than 5 years, completed multiple courses and been on multiple visa types. Now, this is one that immigration has specifically flagged. So if we have a student that's been in Australia for, let's say, 7 or 8 years, they completed a bachelor degree in 2017, then they went on to a 485 visa for 2 years. Then they went back and studied a diploma in management or something. Then they went on to a 408 visa, and now they want to apply for the graduate diploma. Again, we would look at that case closely. Reason being is that the migration strategy that was released in December last year has made it very clear that immigration is looking at students who have been in the country for a long time without becoming permanent residents. So these are the temporary, permanent, or permanent temporary, whatever you'd like to call them, students. We've been advised that students who have been here for more than 5 years are more likely to have problems when it comes to further visa applications under that provision of the migration strategy. Again, it doesn't mean we will reject outright, but students in these situations will be asked for further information, and it will all depend on how well they explain why they want to do what they're doing. Applicants who have already completed a master's degree and now want to study the graduate diploma. Again, and this is applying to students who are on a student visa. If they're on a 485 visa or a 408 visa and can complete within the duration, it doesn't matter. But where a student has already completed a master's degree and again, they now want to downgrade to the graduate diploma, we would request further information. It may be that the decision to do this makes sense. And if the student can explain it clearly and show how it makes sense to their future, then there's a very good chance that we would accept it. But without that explanation, it may run into problems. Next, applicants who are currently studying a master's degree with more than 2 or 3 months left to complete that master's degree and wish to enroll in the graduate diploma concurrently. Now, recently we've received a number of applications in this scenario where we are getting requests saying, oh, don't worry, the student is currently studying a master's degree at Monash. They don't need a COE from you. They want to study the graduate diploma concurrently with their master's. Now, there's a couple of things of concern there. Firstly, the graduate diploma is an intensive course. It does require full-time placement. It would be extremely difficult for a student studying a master's degree at another university to study the graduate diploma at the same time and pass. Now, I have my suspicions about why some students might be doing this, and it is very likely that these students will tell us that they want to enroll concurrently. And as soon as they get enrollment with us, they will cancel their enrollment in the master's program and transfer to the Grad Dip. That is a way of getting around what I spoke about before about the downgrades. So we have spoken to our academic director, who has also said that he is concerned about this and we should not be allowing students to enroll concurrently. However, if a student is currently studying a master's degree and they will finish at the end of this year and they intend to enroll in the graduate diploma in term 5, we would accept that because the overlap is very short. And they should be able to manage that. But generally, if it's more than 2 or 3 months of concurrent study, we generally would not approve it. In the Master of Teaching, red flag cases would be those who have already completed a master's degree. Someone asked me in the chat before, will we allow a second master's? Yes, we will. But they are considered a red flag case and we will require further information. So again, the student will need to explain how this second master's will benefit their future. So it's totally up to the student and yourself as their agent as to how you explain that. One thing I'd like to bring to your attention here, which is I found really useful information. I spoke to the Department of Immigration on Tuesday. I had an hour-long meeting with them and I was talking about cases like this. As you are all aware, the genuine temporary entrant GTE requirement no longer exists. This is no longer part of legislation. It is therefore okay for a student to mention that they intend to apply for permanent residence. I know that a lot of people are scared to do that because we've been programmed for so long to say nothing about permanent residence. But with GTE gone, immigration has confirmed that you can mention permanent residence. And if what you're talking about makes sense and shows that the application for permanent residence is in Australia's best interests as well as the student's best interest, then that is likely to pass. Now, what do I mean by that? We've all been told, again, with the migration strategy that was released in December, they made it very clear that not every student will get permanent residence in Australia. Students doing in-demand courses, and Adam mentioned that briefly before on the new list, students who are doing those courses are more likely to be invited to apply for permanent residence, and teaching is one of those courses. So if a student has completed a Master of Professional Accounting and they are now applying to us for the Master of Teaching, you could legitimately say, I completed a Master of Professional Accounting. I originally intended to apply for permanent residence as an accountant. But as we all know, getting a permanent residency as an accountant is more and more difficult. The number of points you need is getting higher and higher. But I have looked at Australia's long-term plan. I understand that there is a shortage of teachers in Australia, particularly early childhood teachers. And that has factored into my decision to change my occupation and my career path. Immigration does allow for logical changes in career path. And if you can relate that back to the migration strategy, then immigration has no grounds to deny that. It's important to note that it would be unlawful for immigration to deny an application on GTE grounds because GTE no longer exists. All right, so it's all about how you explain what the student is wanting to do. Again, applicants who have been in Australia for more than 5 years, completed multiple courses and been on multiple visa types would also be considered a red flag. Again, I'll just confirm that red flags don't automatically mean refusal. There may be some cases where that happens, but generally speaking, we would require further information and give you the opportunity to provide that. I'll now go on to some of the frequently asked questions that we get and hopefully be able to answer more of the questions you're putting up. Graduate diploma. So do we accept students wanting to downgrade from a master's degree to the graduate diploma? Now, we've gone over that a little bit. The answer is if the downgrade is from a master's in a similar field, we will accept it without further evidence required. If not, if the student is downgrading from a master's from another discipline, we may request evidence of further information, depending on the student profile. What are the English requirements? Now, we've said the English requirements for the Grad Dip are IELTS 6.5 with no band less than 6.5, or PTE 58 with no band less than 58, or completion of an Australian bachelor's degree or higher, or completion of a bachelor's degree or higher from Canada, New Zealand, the UK, or the USA. So if the student has completed a bachelor degree or higher from one of these English-speaking countries, they will be considered to meet the English requirements for the Grad Dip. In the Master of Teaching, do we accept students wanting to study a second master's? Again, we've just gone over that briefly. We usually won't deny an application outright unless the student's profile has a number of red flags. Each case is assessed on its own merits, but in cases where the student is wanting to do a second master's, we will request further information. So hopefully it won't be rejected outright. They'll be given the opportunity to provide further information. The English requirements for the Masters, as we've said, is IELTS 7 with no band less than 7, or PTE 6.5 with no band less than 6.5, or completion of the graduate diploma. Now, because this is a higher English course, IELTS 7, completion of a bachelor degree in Australia or the US or Canada or anywhere else does not meet the higher entry requirement for IELTS 7. So if the student is going into a master's direct program, they must meet the IELTS 7 directly. If they're coming in through the graduate diploma pathway, it is that IELTS 6.5 or completion of an Australian degree or one of those degrees from another English-speaking country. Do we accept students who have lodged an application for merits review at the ART? Yes, we do. But we will require evidence of the appeal lodgement and that the appeal was lodged within the last 12 months. Now, we know at the moment most appeals at the ART are taking 18 months to 24 months. If the appeal was lodged in the last 12 months, we will accept it. If it was lodged more than 12 months ago, we will look at those on a case-by-case basis. What type of visas can we accept for onshore students apart from student visas? So obviously we will accept students on a 485 visa if they can complete within the duration of that 485 visa. As you're all aware, legislation has changed and it is no longer possible for a student to lodge an application for a student visa onshore if they have already held a 485 visa. They can decide to go offshore and apply again, and if they do that, we would consider them an offshore applicant and they would need to meet the offshore genuine student requirements. We will also accept students on a 408 visa. Now, if they can complete the Grad Dip or the Grad Dip Masters package within the duration of the 408 visa, we won't request any further information. That is fine. However, if their 408 visa is going to expire and they intend to apply for a new student visa, we will accept these cases, but the student will be required to meet the genuine student requirement because they are applying for a new student visa. That may be as simple as an interview, or it may require an interview and further documentation. And that will usually depend on the evidence level of the student's home country or their profile in terms of what their academics are like, what their English is like, that type of thing. We will also accept students on a subclass 417 and 462 visas. So those are the working holiday visas. But again, such applicants will need to meet the GSR and we will let you know at the time of application. So basically, that is it in a nutshell from admissions. As I said, please always submit an application. We generally will not just reject an application unless there are a number of red flags. If you have an application that you think is high risk and you don't want to waste time lodging the application in the system, feel free to contact your RM or email me directly, and I will let you know whether or not it would be worth your while lodging the application. Otherwise, please feel free to lodge and we will process. So thank you for your time, everyone. That's it from me, and I'll pass back to Adam and further questions.
Good one. Okay. Thank you very much, John. We have an absolutely huge number of questions there. So I'll just kick off with an important one there. So as we discussed before, Term 5 is still open for the graduate diploma this year. You can apply up until the 30th of October at the latest. Now, John, there's a few questions there saying that people are unable to locate the Term 5 intake on StudyLink. Could you give some guidance to how to find that intake? Because it's definitely open for Sydney and Melbourne, right?
Yes. So there have been some system issues for some agents. It's not happening for everyone. There are a couple of things that you can look at. In most cases, these haven't been a genuine system issue. It has been that the agent has failed to check the second or third page. So when you go into the system, you search for the Graduate Diploma of Education, and it will bring up all of the availabilities. When you click on, let's say, the Melbourne, Sydney, Perth campuses, that will take you into the application form. You go into the application form and you get down to where you need to select your preferred intake. You click on that, and then depending on the course, there may be more than one page of intakes, and you'll see there's an arrow at the bottom. So if you see the arrow, always click through to the second page, the third page. Generally, for Southern Cross University courses, it will show main campus and online availabilities first. So they will show on the first page. The Sydney, Melbourne, Perth campuses will tend to show on the second or third pages. So if you can only see online and main campus, look for that arrow and click through to the next page. I can guarantee you it will definitely be there. Another tip, many students want to study online on our campuses, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth. Now, we need to make it clear here. There's a difference between choosing the online option and choosing the campus online option. So if a student is not on a student visa and they want to take the online option at the Sydney, Melbourne or Perth campus, do not select online. Select Melbourne, Sydney, Perth, and when the application is lodged, the student will be able to choose to study on campus or online when they enroll. Okay, so do not choose the online option. That will mean that the student will be belonging to the main campus. They will not have an on-campus option, so they don't get the on-campus support that they would be getting if they're an on-campus student. And what we're getting is many agents accidentally choosing online and then asking, oh, sorry, can you please transfer that to the Melbourne campus or Sydney campus? So that's a tip there. Students on a non-student visa wants to study online at Melbourne or Sydney, choose Melbourne or Sydney, don't choose online, and then we can arrange that. Obviously, if the student is on a student visa, they do not have an online option and must study on campus.
All right, good one. Thank you, John. Okay, now a few questions have been posted about the work placement and the 60 days. So Mahesh Singh has asked, are there additional work placement hours during the second year of the Masters of Teaching? And the answer is no. There's only the 60-day placement during the first year of the Master of Teaching, where there's 60 days, because the first year is the same as a graduate diploma. The second year is purely academic. So there are no further work placements during the second year. All right. Now, we're not going to have time to answer all of these questions, but I'll see if I can pick one here that's very, very popular. Sol in Vietnam is asking, John, this is related to a student coming from another master. If a student has a Master of Accounting, would they be able to apply for the graduate diploma if they're on a 485?
Yes, absolutely. If they're on a 485 visa, there's really no genuine student requirements we need to look at. They're not subject to ESOS, so we don't care.
Okay, excellent. And another quick question. This is from Luckney. Are we accepting students on a bridging visa, a 500 bridging visa?
That's not an easy one to answer. Now, what we've seen in cases like this is where a student has applied for a student visa using a COE for a diploma, and they are waiting for grant of that student visa, and they're wanting to use that COE to apply to us. In a case like that, no. You would need to wait until the visa is granted before we would do that. However, if the student has applied for a new student visa on a higher education COE, yes, we would accept that if they're on a bridging visa.
Okay, excellent. And there's a final question. Debbie might be in a position to answer this one. Linda Jiang is asking if a student starts in the October intake, when would they complete their course? Would it be fair to say 12 months approximately, Debbie?
Correct. So it's the full year. And again, I'll just have a quick refresh of the study plan. So if they're starting in October, they will finish at the end of term 4, 2025. So that is this end of September, early October 2025. It's a 1 year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Thank you, Debbie. Now, apologies, everyone. We have run out of time for today's session. So just a couple of quick reminders. If you do need help and you're based in Australia, we have Maria and Laura who are here. We will be sharing this presentation with you tomorrow and also the recording. I've also just pasted in the chat the online global admissions and genuine student guide. So if you have any questions for students in Australia or other countries, please have a look at that and it'll give you all of the details you need. A final reminder that the October intake is still open. You can apply up until the 30th of October at 12 o'clock. So we look forward to receiving your applications. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Debbie and John, for presenting. Hope you all stay safe and we'll talk to you all soon. Thank you.